Hey, and welcome back to Brothers in Depth. Today is a conversation that I'm actually really excited to have. The topic is men and fighting. And I'm joined here by Jan Willem van der Heide, who is many things. He is a coach, he's a fighter, he's a retreat leader, uh, but above all, for me at least, he's one of my very best brothers. And that's why I'm interested for this conversation because he has a wealth of experience around men and fighting. It's what he does for a living in large part. But also, I tend to find out something about myself when I have a conversation with Jan. So, Jan, thanks for taking the time. Thanks for being here today.
Good to be here. I always love conversations with you, and I always feel like we don't have enough.
Greece. It's a scarce resource. Usually, I'll start with a particular personal anecdote or direction, but I actually want to start differently with you. I want to ask, you've had this long history of fighting yourself, a long history, like your way of coaching with men is literally to fight with them, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I want to know why you think men respond so well to the experience of challenge and why is it so valuable, particularly as a medium for boxing? So, why do men respond to challenge and why is boxing or fighting an important part of it?
Well, there's many answers to the question depending on how you look at it. One of the things that I realized is that as men, evolutionary, like if we're able to fight, like we're able to protect, and if we're able to protect as well, and we're able to fight, we can also provide because we have to fight the lion or the gazelle or whatever it is, and it requires our utmost presence, like physically, mentally, emotionally, but able to do that. Like it requires so much more than meditation or even climbing a mountain. And I believe it's like it's in our man's DNA to fight. And because it's so ingrained in our DNA, we get to see what we're made of. I get to see what I've been made of. And sometimes at a certain part of my life, like I realize like I am a weak, scared little boy. And through fighting, I get to also see like I'm a freaking strong, powerful warrior. And that evolution has given me a level of confidence, a level of strength, a level of calmness and peace that could have not come from anywhere else. No amount of coaching or therapy or freaking screaming into a pillow or breath work would even come close to the level of your resilience that I built because of fighting.
Yeah, I love it. And I wonder, a lot of men will have had some experience with fighting gyms, even they go into boxing gym and they may not have had the same experience or they may not have had a personal growth experience, even after years of doing so. So, what's different about the work that you do and that we do together on the retreats that is different to that experience? Just a gym boxing class.
That's such a great question. I'll give you an example of an experience that I've had that was so wildly interesting. So I went to a certain boxing school 10 years ago. And I was this boxing school and I went there 3 times a week and I fought and I fought and I fought and I sparred and I did all the workouts. And I remember I used to have like boxing partners and I didn't never really improve that much. I just got a little stronger, got a little faster, but I didn't really necessarily got better. And I noticed it with everybody there as well. And at a certain point, I went back after doing the work here in Bali, which is the self-development and the mirror work and everything that I do with men now. And I went back and I saw one of the buttons, actually two guys that I used to spar with, and they haven't improved at all. But I improved like I became from like mediumly good to like completely owning them, like and all. And then what I did there, I was like, I gave them emotional tools in that moment instead of boxing tools. And I literally saw them within that moment leap their boxing experience and the way they fought and their skills and technique improved tremendously. As almost if they suddenly had a year extra experience, proper experience. And that's, I think, one of the biggest differences. It's so much more than just the physical, what I do and what we do. And when you just go to a gym and you just hit the pads and you just do a little bit of sparring, you just get the physical, which is like, but if you just change your footwork a little bit instead of just like, what are you afraid of? What's coming up with you when you hit the other person? And why do you freeze in that moment when you're up against the ropes? Like, it has to tell so much about the personality and the person, which will then improve them so much in the boxing, but actually everywhere in life. Because it's same freeze scenario when they get afraid or they get challenged or they get into a situation where they don't know what to do, they have the same response. And so we take the experience and make sure that it's so visceral on all levels that when they go back out in the world, they feel like a different man. And that's, I think, makes night and day difference.
100%. It makes me think of, I think you recommended me the show Physical 100. It's an
Mhm.
amazing South Korean TV show where they have the 100 fittest people in Korea of every discipline, and they pit them against each other in physical challenges. So in the end, there's 10 left, 5 left, 3 left, and then there's one overall winner out of 100 men, women, the whole gamut, CrossFit fighters, everything. And one thing that really struck me, particularly as you get to know the top 10, they say almost exactly the same thing when they get knocked out, and it's, "I feel so weak. I must go back and train." And it's like these are physical specimens of human beings, like not only strong and ripped, but great cardio, flexible. Like they have bodies that most people would kill for. That their underlying story is that I'm weak, and what they're doing is to not feel like that, but they're only in the body, so therefore they'll feel like that no matter what. And it's kind of what you're speaking to, right? Like you can go to the gym because you're afraid, and I feel weak. No matter how many times you hit a pad, or actually no matter how good you get, until you work on the thing that's underneath that,
Mhm.
it may not change. So one thing I'd be interested to hear from you is if you think back. So Jan and I run retreats together, but Jan does a huge amount of coaching, both with women, but with men, it's usually one on one. And you have boxing gloves, you have a mouth guard, sometimes you have headgear, and there's inquiry and coaching that you'd expect from a coaching session, but then it's born into the physical. So, is there a moment that you can think of with the client, not mentioning your name, where there was a question or an answer and something came through in the fighting that really surprised you or humbled you or had an effect?
There's 1,000 examples of this, and I'll share a recent example that was really so fascinating. I've been doing this work for so long and so intimately that I intuitively being led by what's possible. And I was fighting this man, and within the fighting, he felt incapable of fighting me, and it became so much shame because he's seen as this capable man to be seen, and in that moment, he just knew for a fact that he can't handle himself. Like, he can't actually do this, and that's the thing that he's been afraid of showing everybody. So but then it came out, and he just started crying so much, and he started collapsing as well. It's like he needs to, like, fall to the floor, and in that moment, I said, "Get up and continue fighting as you feel this."
Mm.
And in that moment, as he's crying and fighting me, he fought twice as good. He hit me in the face for the first time, and he got this massive smile on his face that, like, it created this freedom and peace in himself instead of, like, going, "Oh, what's coming up?" and everything. No, it's actually he's still powerful. In the moment where he breaks down and his worst shame and guilt and the things that he's been pressing for his entire life comes up, he became the most powerful man in that moment because he decided he could. And he hasn't collapsed since for anything, which was a pattern of his when something very difficult would come up.
I love it. It's so easy to fight well, be with your girlfriend well, be in your life well when everything's going well, right? And then the question is,
Exactly.
what happens when it doesn't? And everybody collapses. Like
Mhm.
everybody has their own version of it. That's not the thing. It's what you do with it. And this is why I think I enjoy fighting as the main medium. It's because it's so unignorable. Like you can have a men's circle and talk about things, but you can ignore the thing you really need to talk about all day long. And doing the Vipassana meditation is so fucking valuable. I meditate daily, and yet I can meditate and I can think about what's for lunch. With my partner, I can be sneaky with my patterns and whatever I do. But when I'm actually fighting somebody, there's nowhere to run. If I'm thinking about breakfast, I'm going to get punched in the face. It's a very abrupt call to present. If I'm collapsing, then I'm going to find out about it real quick. And that's what I love about this work. It's the immediacy of it. It's how immediately effective it is and how there's nowhere to hide. When it comes to this idea of men, I think a lot of men and a lot of women both have this idea that fighting is somehow wrong. Like there's many words for it. There's toxic, or like women in particular don't understand, like when we say we get together, we punch each other in the face, then we hug and we love each other more.
I would love to interrupt you on this one.
Shoot.
I had a session with a woman last week.
Uh-huh.
She signed up for my coaching. And I said, like, I actually like to do our first session in person. I'm gonna hire a dojo. This is what we're gonna do. And she's like, okay. And she came and I said, like, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna set your mouth guard. We're gonna put on gloves and gloves. And she's like, just no fucking way. I don't want to be violent. This doesn't work for me. And I said, I get it. And it took about an hour, not of convincing, but letting her know that she can trust me through how I show up. That she's like, okay, I'm willing to put on the boxing gloves. And when we started doing the fighting together and we actually did it, she could trust me in a level where her 6-year-old could come out and she had more joy and fun that she's had in years. Years. And through that became like this feeling of like she doesn't need to fight me anymore. Like she doesn't need to fight men. She's been fighting men her entire life. And so when she just looks at me, and then she just felt like, how about we have just dance? And it's just like, and then she just started dancing and she has the most free dancing. Like she was so embodying her feminine. And it had to go through this place of like, well, if we fight, you're actually safe. And I could have never explained that to her in a way because she also didn't want to do it. And the experience gave her something invaluable.
Totally. I mean, I get it too. Like I'll ask you a question I heard the other day, which is, who is the most dangerous man for a woman?
Mhm.
What would you say?
And a man that is doesn't know how to handle himself, doesn't know what to do.
Even more specific,
You tell me.
a husband. Statistically, more likely going to be the recipient of domestic, more likely to be murdered. The number one reason for murder is usually infidelity. So no fucking way women don't feel safe to fight. Like statistically, men are the most dangerous thing on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I totally get it. And I want to come back to the first answer. It's where I was going anyway. Is in your eyes, why is a man who doesn't know how to fight more dangerous than a man who does?
Well, in my experience, again, it's the people that I've saw in the fighting gym even, like they're the most peaceful people that they found because they know what the effect of their actions are and the effect of other people are. They're the people that walk away, and they know what to do and stand up and they have this certain peace in them. They know how to control themselves. They've been in the fire and know it hurts, both for themselves and for others. So this is the last thing that they'll do. It's interesting though. Well, I don't know why this experience resonates with me, but beginning of this week, I was in the at a medical care with my girlfriend, and she was getting a panic attack and she was almost fainting. And in that moment, I just held her and I told the doctor to get her some food and I told the assistant to get her some water, and I just held her and I helped her to lay down and talk to her and breathe. And then she's like, holy freaking shit. In this situation, I've always experienced both men and women completely freaking out when something is happened. And I panic even more because they can hold the situation. And she's like, you stay calmer than the calmest water on the world. She didn't say that, but I like to use that.
I just want to add that metaphor in.
And she just like, wow, that's what it's like. And I said, yeah, because I've been in the freaking fire. I've been in the situations that, I've literally stood across men that could literally kill me, that I've trained to kill me, do things, and actually knock me out. And I know I'm going to be okay. So any other situation, whether it's you're angry with me or you're in panic or you're hurt in whatever shape or form, I got it. You
Totally.
need to react.
I know the most acute, shameful moments of my life when I look back at times where there's been intense pressure of some kind, and I've acted in a way that didn't feel good. When I moved away from rather than towards, when I thought about myself rather than others, and usually that's just a fight or flight response. I mean, I think it's multiple levels, but just on a very physiological level, the central nervous system gets overwhelmed. When it gets overwhelmed, you think about yourself more than you think about others. You fight, flight, freeze, or fuck. Not usually fuck in those situations, but that's another story. Or fawn would be the other one. So the value and this could be it's the same thing in an ice bar. The value of being in an ice bar is jumping in an ice bar, having your central nervous system be jacked up to 11 and then consciously calming yourself back down. The difference is fighting, you do it for a lot longer. 3 minutes, and you do it for a lot more often.
A lot unpredictable too.
Less unpredictable. And then how do you see, let's say that, I mean, that's a great example from yourself. Do you have an example from another man that you've worked with of how that's expanded their capacity? Like that feeling of putting the nervous system into a little bit of overwhelm, but working with them there at the edge, how has that expanded them elsewhere?
Well, I think before I'll use an example. I think the best thing that you described is like I push men into their discomfort, but I never push them over. It's when they're at fight, flight, or freeze, like that nothing works.
Yeah.
And so I always making sure that they're in a place of discomfort and not too much.
Yeah.
And really, where it mostly show up, and this is one of actually my first clients. He was really struggling in his relationship, in his finances, and I didn't know what to do in the world. And everything basically scared him. And when we got his nervous system so capable through the fighting of holding a lot more stress and challenge, he started his own business. He signed his first $6,000 client in that month. He asked with the $6,000, he knew it's like, okay, I can actually handle this relationship. He married this woman, got her pregnant. They moved to a new house. Like it just like because he knew internally, I got it all. Like no matter what happens, I got it. And so suddenly the possibilities of his life just expanded.
Love.
It's never, yeah.
And I mean, it also strikes me, if you have the ability in your system to kick ass, your ass gets kicked less. Like even in a really practical sense, like I've traveled all my life and I've been to some really dangerous places. I've basically never, ever been the target of a random beating or mugging. And not because I didn't stand out, not because I was always playing it safe in some really dodgy situations, but I've trained martial arts for a very long time. And because I've done that, I literally walk through the world differently if I know I can't defend myself. And that's so you become prey. Not that I walk around as a predator, but that's so very much felt. So if you found yourself being kicked rather than having the feeling of kick ass, and that could be by your partner, it could be by your business, it could be by your work, it kind of strikes me that you need a little feeling of being able to kick ass.
100%. Like in relationships, this works. Like I feel like the feminine most important quality to find in a man is safety. And so there's all these subconscious patterns in women to test a man in order that they feel safe. And so when a man is not bothered by it or not reactive, then the woman automatically feels safe, and the subconscious reasons to test just kind of like disappear. Another thing that I noticed in my work, and I remember when I first started fighting, this is like 20, yeah, 18 years ago. I remember this. I went out with some of my friends, and there's this guy who came up to me, and he really wanted to pick a fight. And he went up to me, and he started shouting, and he started like telling me things, and I don't remember what he said. And I just breathed, and I'm like, "What's like?" This is like it didn't bother me, and I just see his face. I remember the look on his face, and he looks at me, and he just literally walks away, and he goes out of the club. And it was just, and it was that was the difference because before I was always scared and I would get attacked or pushed and get things thrown on me, and it's like, ah, this is the difference. This is the result of the work.
100%. I remember a very similar situation when I was in Cuba, and there's a nightclub in the middle of Cuba with a good friend of mine, and my friend was kind of loud and a little bit drunk, and he's just a bit over the top. He's awesome, but he's over the top, and he just bumps into this bigger guy, and they just starts getting really heated, and my friend backs away, and I just stand next to the guy. And he's like, looks at me, and goes, "You're all right?" Like, really, and there's not much you can say to that. Like,
Mhm.
that doesn't infuriate, like, "Oh, I'm okay." "No, are you all right?" Like, "You either escalated." I go, and I just look him just out of mine. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. How are you?" You know? And then he's like, and it was the same thing. He ended up just walking away because there's no fear and there's no strive for domination or dominance. It was just somewhere in between. There's a quiet confidence that comes with that. And what I like about these retreats and the work that you do privately is you don't need 20 years to train as a martial artist to have that feeling, right? Like, it's what would kind of the reverse of what we're describing before when people train, but never address the underlying issue. It's the other way around. When you address the underlying issue with the training, then it's exponential. So you can feel the confidence way more quickly than you have the competence.
Mhm.
So when a man finishes a retreat or a session, they probably won't enter into a regional boxing match, but they will walk through the world a bit different.
Yeah, I remember so well when my first coach, there was a guy in our group, and this is a small group, like 4 guys training under. And this guy was incredibly talented. Still, from the thousands of fighters I've ever met, like, I think he's the most talented he's ever been. Like, he just understood in his bones and his blood, like, how to fight. Like, he did things that only a world champion would do, like, just naturally. He had no emotional belief regulation himself. Like, he would crumble the moment we would spar. Like, and he would slightly get hit, and he would crumble, and he would be out.
Mm.
And he quit.
Mm.
And I remember my teacher, like, literally grieving for a year because he knew he's gonna have a new world champion. And he trained world champions, my teacher. And he knew, like, I found one in the Netherlands. And then he quit, and then he had to deal with me, which was also a lot of I would never I would never be very talented, but I work hard.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, we've had a few men in the program that are a little like that, right? That has some real core competence, but as soon as they
Mhm.
get hit, that's where the collapse comes from. And then we've had the other, I remember so clearly another man sparring with him in the center, and before I mentioned fight, flight, or fawn, and it's good for the people listening to understand which one you are. There's some good information. Like when you get confronted, do you like lean forward and start to fight? Do you just want to get out of it?
Mhm.
Freeze is also possible. Uh, or fawn, and fawn is to fawn over, so to become overly friendly in order to not seem like you're a threat.
Mhm.
And the guy across from me was a big dude, but he was just smiling. He was smiling all the time. It's like, it's okay. And I so recognized that in myself. And then at one point, I whispered across from him, like, just keep going. You're doing great, but stop fucking smiling. And as soon as he stopped smiling, he started crying. But it was so much more real. And he wasn't collapsed in it. They were just tears. It was like a relief. And then he boxed 10 times better than he had a minute
Yeah, I
ago.
remember this moment.
So crazy, isn't it?
Mhm. I remember you talking about it, yeah.
So then there's another question that's a really interesting one that was less expected to me before the retreats, which is how do you see the connection between fighting and a man's vulnerability? Because what I noticed, I'll give you some more as you ponder, is the retreats, we have this really intense yang energy, like it's literal fighting within containers. But the result of that is always that the conversations are 10 times deeper. The tears are way more present than if we didn't do it at all. So what's the connection?
There's multiple layers. One of them is, I think as men, we have a guard up automatically.
Mm.
And when we get tired, and I mean properly tired, that guard kind of dissolves for a while and then the real stuff can come up. That's so much more available than just an hour of coaching conversation over a call. That's one thing. Another thing is when we meet this edge of ourselves, we get to see what we're capable of. And because we feel we're capable of, I can actually, it's like, I already know I'm a fucking warrior after I go through certain things. And then I can share what I'm really ashamed about. But if I feel like a regular guy, like, I'm not gonna share in front of a bunch of other dudes what I'm ashamed about because I've feel afraid I'm gonna be judged, be seen as weak. But if I just showed I went 5 rounds hardcore with everybody back to back, they already know I'm a freaking warrior gonna stand up for myself. So I might as well share what I'm really embarrassed about, what I really don't want them to know.
That's so true. That's such a good point. It's, I imagine, doubly effective for the guys that are already big, strong, competent, right? Because
Mhm.
they tend to be big, strong, and competent precisely not to show that they're actually small, weak, and incompetent. So if they get to be that in the space with other men, then they have space to also be the other thing.
I remember there's a couple fight clubs ago. We had that big. He was a bodybuilder, a massive guy, tattoos everywhere. And I remember him crying in front of the whole group, and him then saying, "It's the first time I cried in front of other people." And he was 42 or something.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with a guy the other day about the Fight Club, about the retreat. And it was actually with two men. One has already been on a few workshops with us. He loves the work. He just raves about it. And he's raving about it to this other man. Another man just like, oh no, it's not for me. I don't want to get hit in the head. I don't really. It's just not for me. Like, what would you say about that? Or what would you say to that man?
Like, great. It's not for you.
Uh huh.
You're not meant to be this warrior. You're not meant to be this person, and there's nothing wrong with you. That I feel like some of the men that are like, oh, I can't do that. Like, there's no way. Like, that's what it's needed for. But the men are just like, yeah, I thought about it, and it's not really my thing. I'm like, yep, not your thing. That's great. And I love that. Like, that's the clarity and strength, actually, what I see in these men. And they fill a different role in the world. We don't need all men to be warriors. Like I embody my warrior very much, but less so the magician. And that man could really embody the magician, and he creates wonderful things in the world that I would never have thought of.
Yeah, great answer.
Yeah.
I just had an interview with Chris Skidmore, and we are talking about the myth of the underworld as the emotional space that men are afraid to go into, with Cerberus, a three-headed dog, protecting the gateway to the underworld. And one of Hercules' labors was to capture the dog. So he fights it, he wrestles it to the ground and pulls it out of the underworld. And that's kind of the hero's journey myth, right? Like he's the biggest classical god masculine figure in existence. But there's also Orpheus, who played music. He simply played his music to slip into the underworld. And so I get it. Both are totally needed. So then the question would be for men that have this resistance, like it's not that. It's not like, like it's not a confident, it's not for me, but it's like a rejection of.
Yeah, that's a different thing. It's a whole different thing altogether. And I love your example. Also reminds me of Thor, the classical warrior. And then who's the other guy?
Loki.
Loki, yeah. And he just is not less powerful. Maybe he's even more powerful actually in the myth. Um, but the men are resisting they're resisting challenge everywhere. In the relationship. They're usually the men that are either want to be in open relationships, right? They'll never really commit to a woman. When they do have a woman, because the woman claimed them so hard, the woman is continuously disappointed in how they're showing up. They usually don't have money in their bank account, but somehow make it work because their father pities them still. It's like it's such classical things. It's like because they're not willing to show they're not even asking. oh, what do I get from that? They're so resignated in the thing. And some of them are beyond helping. Like I remember talking to a guy 5 years ago about Fight Club, and it took him 5 years to join. And then he's like, "Oh my god, I needed this 5 years ago." And it's like, "Yeah, I know."
Oh, yeah.
And it also it makes total sense why he's stepping in now, because he feels like he's ready and he can claim these things, whether it's fatherhood, whether it's business or a career, or it's like his own personal social media account where he expresses his freedom. But it's that resistance is showing up everywhere in his life, and it's full "I'm here" presence. It's just not it's just not there yet.
Yeah. That's a great demarcator, right? For the man that listening, like, yeah, this sounds like really amazing work. It's almost like the reason if you don't want to do it, if the reason is clear and calm and has no charge to it, great. And a way to tell is the rest of your life working? Like, are you getting your ass kicked basically in the rest of your life? And if you are, then well, maybe there's something in fighting for you.
I can give you another example. Recently, I went on a call from a man who wants to join warrior camp. And they said, like, how's life going? It's like, well, my woman is really not happy with me. I'm not happy with myself and the way I'm showing up. And, the work that I do is not paying off. I'm like, great, come to warrior camp. And he's like, yeah, it sounds perfect. And like we talk about it a little bit. And I was like, okay, well, here's the payment. Like, well, I have to talk to my wife first. And it's not that it didn't come in a way of like, oh, she's my like co-partner. We decide finances, but it was just like there's just like I can't come in that voice, and I just knew like, okay, if he said, uh, like I already knew he was not coming and not paying the moment he mentioned that. And of
Mm.
course it happened, but he's that part of him that wants to lean in is just not leaning in enough, and he doesn't actually want to show up. It's just still pretending to do the work, but not actually doing the work.
It's harking back to that same image of Cerberus and the underworld. The one thing in common with all heroes, whether they're musicians or wrestlers, is the willingness to show up. You're actually willing to stand there in front of the thing and just be there. And then there's many ways to go around it and go through it. Like we say this in the retreats and workshops, but if there's something that's an exercise that's happening that frightens you or is too much for you, for most men, it's way more frightening to say, actually, guys, I'm going to sit this one out than it is to go into it terrified and do it anyway. You know,
Mhm.
it's way bigger reclamation of your warriors to say, actually, no.
Not doing this. Yeah, I so agree. And that's oftentimes what women miss in these men,
Yeah.
right? The women they say and the man is like, hey, actually I'm not doing this. But I'm gonna do this instead because this is more important. And that's the solidness that these women look for and they're not getting and they constantly feel like they can't trust this man.
Yeah. Like, there's no center to press against.
No.
Well, let's talk about the women of the men for a moment. We've had, uh, we've had an experience where we invited the partners of the man in, and as the women walk in, the men are being hit in the belly for 3 minutes straight, and the men are being now. There's for those of you listening, there's much more to it. It's a very specific practice where you're with the other man, not trying to hurt him, but it's still intense. And then they fought in front of their women as well. Tell us about the women's reaction there, and also if there's anything else with the women of the men that you've worked with.
Yes. Well, there's two parts to it. It's again, it's where you said before, like women don't understand why this is such an important quality. So when they look at these men go through these tribulations, they don't know why we're doing this. Like they don't get it. So they're looking at their partners like, why am I looking at you fighting another man? That made no sense to her intellectually. And I get that. But when a man go through this very difficult challenge, and we've seen this time, and we put the woman in front of her without words, and the woman starts crying.
Yeah.
I think half of them started crying immediately. They didn't say anything because they suddenly see this man willingly go through such a hard challenge, show up, like don't back down, and just stand in front of the Romans like this is who I am. I'm never ever gonna go anywhere. I got us. And the woman feels that.
Mhm.
Her freaking soul and her tears comes because most of them have never felt that. And so again, they have no idea what the fuck just happened, but they feel it in their freaking core. And that's why we did it.
So good. It's so good. That moment of that witnessing and like some primal recognition was so valuable. And it didn't matter how well the man did. Well, I mean, none of these guys are, some of them had been fighting literally for a few days. Like they've never had any battle experience before, right? So it wasn't about technique. They didn't look like Tyson out there, but it's that willingness. They were showing up in the presence of extreme discomfort and danger. Like it's still dangerous. You're still fighting. And
And we
then,
gave them the hardest challenge that we thought of. And it's
yeah.
a hell of a scary.
Oh, this is making me want to bring the women back into the retreat. So, all right, so good. I want to change tack just a little bit as we start to wind towards a close. And I just want to ask this because I think it always amuses me. You have a long and complicated relationship with fighting, and at one point, you fought to get friends, and now you fight with your friends. And I just wonder if you'd say a few words about what that sentence even means.
Mm. It started basically when I was 6 or 7 years old. There was a couple people, young teenagers that pretended to be my friend. I accept them as friends, and then they beat the living shit out of me. And that memory was so traumatic that I repressed it in my mind. But the subconscious pattern was friends means hurting each other. And so whenever I went back to school and I liked somebody, another kid, another boy, and I was like, hey, do you want to be friends and hang out after school? I started beating him. And I remember this one kid, and I beat him to the ground, and I kicked him and everything, and he ran home crying. And I remember walking home myself, like, oh, I made a friend today. And I was so happy. And it's just like this idea in my mind, this pattern. And obviously, because I had this program, like I couldn't actually make friends. And so in my early 20s, I was just alone, lonely, confused, not knowing how the hell happened, what the hell is happening. And so when I started fighting and people actually fought back, and I was like, realized, oh, actually, this is, we can be friends now. And then I didn't need the outlet in other places to make friends as well. Like I needed to, I really found a deeper thing for myself, and I just love that it's coming full circle now. And actually, one of the guys that's coming to our treat really wants to be my friend. He said, like, look, man, I fucking love you. I really want to be your friend. What does it require? And I said, this is where you can sign up. And he did. And he's coming. And it's like, yeah, I still need that kind of like, let's see what you're made of kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
And what do you need? I need to know I can trust you.
I think that's the thing that the men are always surprised about is how much the level of trust and love happens so quickly. And it always makes me think of that scene in 300 when Leonardo's describing why the guy that's hunched over shouldn't be in the front of the shield wheel. Like he can help other ways, but he can't lift his shield up to protect his brother, right? At the end of the day is where it came down to.
Mhm.
And when you realize that your friend or the man across from you can and would and did, it's like, oh, this it's just a different relationship. It changes immediately because it's beyond verbal. That school story, it's such a common story, at least the dominance thing, where men have been bullied or beaten or being the bully and beaten. And it's so shameful and it's so deep in there. And it's so terrifying to go back into that space of what may happen because there's a dominance subservience thing. And what's different about the work that you do and the work and what's different to fight gyms as well, because that still creeps in, is our one rule of Fight Club, right? You're fighting for your fellow brother, not against him. So I think towards the end, would you say a piece or two on that? What is it to fight? Like you want to make this friend, you're in with this other man. What does it mean to fight for him rather than against him?
Well, I love this piece so much, and it came up in our last fight club a lot actually. And there was one man. It's like, wow, I really realized through this whole ordeal that all the men here is fighting for me,
Yeah.
and so I don't feel like I have the lone wolf life anymore. And I said, it's like, what if every man out there is also fighting for you? And suddenly the opportunity and possibility just shows up. Like everybody's rooting for me, and I can do whatever I want. I can create a business, and I can ask people for help. And it's actually one of the biggest teachings in my men that I coach one-on-one online with. It's like, ask 5 men you know that you can ask for help. Ask them for help.
Yeah.
Ask them for support. And who do you need most from, and you're most afraid to ask? And I remember this entrepreneur, and he's like, well, I have this guy that I see as a mentor. He asks $3,000 for an hour. And, I suddenly got his phone number, but I haven't been afraid to ask him for help. And it's like, great. It's the first person you call up. And he did. And the guy helped him for like 45 minutes. For free.
And then he got the bill in the mail.
He didn't. Of course he didn't. But it's a good joke. But it's like, if you believe people are fighting for you, if you believe your partner, if your friends are fighting for you, like life opens. I remember even with you personally. I remember I had such a fucking hard moment. I remember James is here for me, not against me. And I just called you up and it's like, look, man, I need $6,000 or something. And 5 minutes later, I had it in my bank account. And I was like, wait, did I tell him why I need you know? And then a week later, I sent it back because I didn't need it any longer. But it's like, he's actually here for me, but he really shows it through his actions. But it came through because I believed it so first.
It really strikes me. This relates into a conversation before, and it's not a way that I've thought about it, but I think it's true. Let me see if I can make sense of it. So we talked before about when a man's in his collapse, that usually that's collapse, and you talked about helping the man to stay in the collapse and still fight. But what I notice with men is that in myself and the other men I work with is that when I go into collapse, because I'm in it, I don't want to come out of it for anything. So I want to go by myself into a very dark place. And it's the hardest thing in the world to ask for help, for support of any kind. I'd much rather just die on my cross alone than come off it. So it strikes me that when we talked about the central nervous system and the not kicking ass, but the ability to, in those dark moments, if you know of yourself, you have that strength and that resilience and the capacity to go hard through hard things. When collapse happens, you've still got that to lean on. Everything's going to shit, but I can still do this. I've done hard things. Allowing a lifeline out to maybe ask for help, support, or something else.
Yeah, I mean, what is 8 months ago, I had that moment, and I wrote to you and said, "Hey, I need to share where I'm at."
Yeah.
Right? And that was such a beautiful moment for the both of us.
Well, which is good because we've had the same conversation over the time of relationship, both saying, yeah, I really should have just reached out. But I did it. So it's nice to play. Progress. Hey, that's awesome, man. This has been a fantastic conversation. I mean, we could keep on going on, but I think it's a good place to put a pen in it. And, we have our retreat. It's actually our last one for who knows how long, with the changes and shifts of me going to the US and you being here. Hopefully not the last one forever. But how do people get a hold of you? And I want to say it's not just for men. I know you work with a lot of women as well. So how do they find you? What's the best way to get in touch?
Just Google me on Facebook. Is I think the best thing. That's where I share most of my work about men and women, and it seems to be really taking off and impactful. And so, if you're learning to know more about what I teach and how I coach, that's where I do my thing. So find me on Facebook. Look for my name, which is Jan Willem van der Heiden.
Just Google that.
Yeah,
I'll put it in the
that's
notes.
fine.
Okay, that's great. I highly recommend you checking out Jan's work. And thanks to everyone for listening. Jan, thanks for joining us here today. I really appreciate your insight and, of course, your brotherhood.
Great. It's good to have some quality time with you.